So, hello and welcome to another Sprues and Brews video. Today we're joined by Tjaša and Žiga from Free Company Games. Hi guys, nice to see you. Thanks for coming on to the show.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, yeah.
No problem, are you both well?
Just to clarify, I'm Žiga and this is Tjaša.
Are you both well?
Yeah, we're doing great. We're a bit busy. It's the last month before the Kickstarter, so yeah, things are getting busy. But other than that, we're great.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Good to hear. Good to hear. So I think we'll start. If you want to start, just giving a quick introduction to yourselves, Free Company, and also Eldfall Chronicles.
You want to start?
No, you should do it.
Okay, so I guess he's the creator. I'm the co-creator, and he's also the owner of Free Company TOO. It's a Slovenian-based company. And we're basically a small company, let's say, of geeks and enthusiasts that started creating their own war game, I guess, 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, we were first on Kickstarter in 2021, and it was successful. So then we opened, then we continued our company, and here we are 2 years later, creating our next Kickstarter.
Oh, brilliant. Yes, so that your original Kickstarter campaign for Eldfall Chronicles, that was fulfilled earlier this year, wasn't it? Went out to all the backers.
Yeah, it got fulfilled in about January, February, because it got like super delayed because of the global situation and so on. But yeah.
Yeah, and of course, like a few rogue parcels every now and then they got lost or redirected or didn't get delivered, and a few even stolen. Port piracy and all that.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think it went pretty smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
So I was an all-in backer, so I got everything delivered, and yeah, I love the game. I think it's brilliant. So that's awesome. been here for a few months now. Yeah, like you mentioned, you're launching a new Kickstarter in June, I think, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. June 20th.
June 20th.
Is the official date, yeah.
Okay, and this is for Northern Wind, which is, it's not just an expansion for the core game, it's also a sort of two games in one.
Yes.
So I think before we jump into that bit, because that's the really interesting bit, that's what we're here to talk about today, maybe it's just worth just spending a few minutes talking about what Eldfall Chronicles and what that game is and the type of game it is, and then we'll go on to Northern Wind.
Yeah, sure. So,
come on.
Okay, maybe just an important plug. Eldfall Chronicles as a skirmish game already has one smaller expansion. We call it Reinforcement Pack, called the Wayfarers, which you can actually order right now on the Eldfall Chronicles web shop. And yeah, happy to say that we've spent our weekend packing all the Wayfarers, and they are basically starting to ship out. I believe that the first batch is shipping out tomorrow. So yeah, from now on, they are available for order and delivery. But yeah, other than that, what is Eldfall Chronicles skirmish game? Where should we start?
So the general description is that Eldfall Chronicles is a tabletop skirmish war game. So in the sense that it is deeply tactical and more combat oriented, while it is a skirmish. So each side, each player that plays against each other, for example, or against the game, has a small repertoire of miniatures under their command. That's why it's a skirmish. Yeah, and it's a game played with miniatures. What else?
I would say that like it's, you know, we at Free Company basically put a lot of attention to every single model we make.
Mm-hmm.
The game we are trying to make is we are trying to resemble like engagements of adventurers basically in a fantasy world, meaning that each player is playing you know, an enclosed group of adventurers, you know, handpicked by the player. So that's why we want to make every single adventurer, every single model unique as much as possible. So in a sense, they represent like a certain profession in the setting, but at the same time, you could refer to them almost like nameless characters. So each model has very unique both abilities as well as looks and everything related.
Mm-hmm. That means that basically when you have, for example, 3 to 5 models on your side, each one of them is specific. So each one has certain abilities, items that make it unique, and you can see this on their profile cards. So these profile cards are basically cards that you get with the game. You could actually not have them. Most war games don't have cards, for example, but we designed our cards so that you have an easier time referring to the character and actually remembering what is available to you. And yeah, you on this card you can see what the model is capable of.
I mean, that's just basically the common profiles. I mean, we do have profiles in other games as well. But I guess what extra our profiles have is the other cards, the upgrades and schemes. So those are additional cards. Basically, upgrades give you extra items, extra abilities, and so on you can attach to your models to make them even more unique, even more specialized, according to your needs and what you want to achieve on the battlefield. So in Eldfall Chronicles, how the game is structured, an important part is that players basically undertake different quests, and these different quests can have many different outcomes. And important to add here, killing is just one of the ways of playing Eldfall Chronicles. Like there's many different ways and many different means how you can get to the victory. Really depends on the quest and its objectives. Other than that, maybe just to clarify more about the game size and so on, typically when we are like designing the most balanced format, and now that we are also designing the organized play, we are aiming at 65 points, meaning that this on the table means like 3 to 4 models, as well as a few upgrades for players to choose from. And maybe just like an interesting thing to add, like in the organized play, we want to have something like a side deck. So basically when players, you would have more points to recruit from. So let's say like 80, 85 points. And you could always have like a model or a few upgrades, sitting on the bench. And then you can, before the game starts, you can change a few things depending on the quest.
Tailor your warband to the quest.
Depending on the quest, the enemy, and so on.
Cool.
So I think to summarize, you have models represented by miniatures and their profile cards, and you use them on the battlefield, which is usually an open field, at least in the skirmish wargame, and you undertake quests. These quests have, I guess, objectives, and the better you undertake them, I guess, the better you score.
I mean, the better you get adapted to that. But I guess like if we move from there to the gameplay, what we wanted to achieve with the gameplay is that it's both immersive, highly tactical, that it at the same time resembles real life in a sense. Because like many of us working on the game, we do practice some historical martial arts and stuff like that. So it's important for us like so that the combat resembles a bit like the historical context.
It's definitely been inspired by that sort of background, the Japanese theme and the martial arts, with the fantasy sort of mix.
Yeah, definitely. As well as it's not to underestimate like the influence of like historical medieval martial arts and stuff like that on our design process. We really want to keep that like simultaneous engagement kind of spirit of things, not just basically a turn-based combat in a sense.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, because that's one I think quite unique. So the actual way the players play the game, there's lots of actions and reactions. So there are turns, but both players are participating throughout the entire game, reacting to the punch. A bit like, I would say, Infinity, a little bit like Infinity, but it has got its differences as well. You've got like the stamina sort of resource that sort of dictates how often your models can react, and there's ways to influence the stamina, and you can use like taunt mechanics and things like this to sort of draw out reactions. Like you say, it's very tactical, and I would say you could compare it a little bit to Infinity, but you have a smaller sort of selection of miniatures in your warband that you're using, and I do feel that the sort of engagements feel a lot more sort of intense than Infinity, so it's cool. And of course, you've got magic thrown in. A lot of the models have access to different spell laws, and it's quite a substantive sort of list of spells that you've sort of designed as well. Lots of different schools of magic, and I think there's 4 base factions at the moment. But you mentioned the Wayfinders. Wayfarer's expansion, which has added some additional options for those warbands, and some of them aren't. They're almost like mercenaries or from.
Yeah.
So
I think 2 are mercenaries. One, I think both are semi-neutral. One from the Empire and one from the Coalition. Especially the Coalition one is interesting because she's mounted. So
yes,
the Slayer Dragoon.
Yeah.
As you said, like I think Infinity really keeps like the intense kind of combat vibe, but at the same time we wanted to go in a different direction, and we also wanted like to introduce more resource managing, as you mentioned, with the activation points. So you have them both for actions and reactions and things like that.
Each separate model.
Yeah, for each separate model, so that they are not sharing them across the.
Yeah, that's something in Infinity. You can sort of pile all your orders on a single mini and get them running around the board. But here, your whole warband has to work together, and you have to. And it's not just the reactions that you're using those resources for. I know some of the mages and the wizards are using those resources for accumulating mana and casting spells and summoning creatures. It's quite you get a lot of options as a player, and like you say, very, very tactical. And then I think the other sort of really interesting bit for me as well, which I think is very, very unique. And I played Eldfall Chronicles. I played a lot of it on my own because you've got the AI mechanic. You can play against the game itself, which is fantastic, especially, we've just come out of lockdowns, but when we were in lockdown, that was brilliant. So
I think it's a great way, like how to train and basically prepare yourself on actual engagement with other players.
So to clarify, Eldfall Chronicles can be played solo, so by yourself against the game, because the game has an inbuilt AI. I guess you get hostile behavior cards that tell you how the hostiles behave during their turn. And then you can play cooperatively with another player against the game, or you can play PvP, so against other players.
Yeah, I think these are like big factors, like especially the co-op. We are receiving a lot of like positive feedback from it.
It is brilliant. I play mainly co-op with my brothers actually, and we love that. And I mean, you can sort of play like Warhammer and games like that in teams, but you can't play it against an AI. So it's really cool to do that. And some of the the monsters that you've released miniatures for in the core game as well, the sort of earth and elementals. These are sort of your main AI combatants. Are really interesting sort of monsters to play against as well.
Happy to hear.
Yeah, and now we're actually trying to develop an AI for each and every model. So every one of the older models that you see from the version 1, the Eldfall Chronicles, will eventually probably have an AI. So you can play against every model.
Yeah, that's a huge ambition.
Yeah,
I think that
I mean, for now we have 2 whole factions.
Yeah. Empire of Soga and Hellion League already have the AIs uploaded to our webpage.
Yep.
And we are doing the same for the Sand Kingdoms and Coalition. Those are a bit more difficult to do, since they are much more squishy than the other 2 factions. But at the same time, like it allows a lot of intricacy and so on. But one amazing thing that our friend Samo, Bubble Soldier on Discord, he's amazing. He plays almost every game under the sun, and he's amazing at them. What he suggested is to make unique AIs. So not that like model has only one AI, but at some point we want to make it so that like sentient models, so let's say humanoids and so on, can have like multiple different AIs. So it like when they spawn on the field, it would be a bit randomized what kind of profile they get, depending like almost on their temperament, like whether they are more aggressive, more defensive, and so on. So yeah, that's like a few big things, like in which directions we want to take the game when it comes to co-op and playing against like the environment, the monsters, and so on. That, and of course, like with every single expansion and so on, we want to make new enemies. This is of course true for the Northern Wind, which will bring the terrifying Oni and a few other things we can talk about later.
Yes.
But otherwise, we have 6 different elements of magic that are on our to-do list in the future. Like earthen creatures are representative of earth element, of course, as the name suggests. But then again, we have a huge backlog of doing all other elements as well in the same manner. So yeah, and of course each will be different in character. Like earthen creatures are perhaps, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but like you could say they're the more boring ones. Basically, a lot of armor and a lot of like straightforward approach. But then we will have different things like how fire is, fierce and quick and so on, and like wind is, it takes its time to,
Swift.
yeah, swift and such. In any case, yeah, there will be a lot of like character in each kind of element of creatures and monsters. So to shorten it up, basically, yeah, we want to make PvE very intricate and a huge part of the game.
It's really interesting to hear that, yeah, because it is a very, very sort of strength of the game, I think. And I think you mentioned there some of the different sort of magic and elemental and creatures and that kind of thing. Reading through all the lore, there's quite a lot of lore that you've created for the game, a lot of background for the game, and I found there's lots of hints and clues and sort of things in there that hint at potential future races or miniatures, and I think maybe we'll come on to some of that when we start talking about Northern Wind in a minute. But there's definitely scope there, I think, for lots of interesting sort of rules, mechanics, miniatures, and sort of creatures and things like that to join the game. So great. Thanks for that. I would say brief overview of Eldfall Chronicles, but it's quite an in-depth overview of Eldfall Chronicles actually. So that was great. But what we're here to talk about today is your new Kickstarter campaign, Northern Wind. So what's Northern Wind?
Should I? What?
I guess I can start. So Northern Wind is an extension to Eldfall Chronicles, the skirmish wargame. However, it takes a new turn because it delves deeper into the dungeon crawl mechanics. So our cooperative and solo options for the base game Eldfall Chronicles were so well received that we were basically thinking about making something in this direction for the next campaign. And that's why we started developing the dungeon crawler. And what we basically did is take the Eldfall Chronicles mechanics and adapted them into dungeon crawl mechanics. So Eldfall Chronicles, the skirmish wargame, is played on an open field. And the main difference with the dungeon crawler is that the dungeon crawler is played on tiles, so in a more enclosed field. The base mechanics are all very similar. So you get profile cards, you have upgrade cards, and all other components, really.
Yeah, I mean, mechanics in general are almost the same except for the movement, and even with the movement, while the mechanics of the movement could be considered a bit different, at the same time feel almost the same as on the open field. That was one big thing we wanted to achieve. Because like it's important for us that like if you play dungeon crawler, you should be also able to play the skirmish game, and vice versa. That's definitely, especially when it comes to combat, I think that the action reaction system, it's like very intense kind of way of playing and very immersive at the same time. I mean, incidentally, before Infinity, and even Infinity, well, the kind of action reaction mechanics are actually stemming from the Fading Suns RPG. And even before that, like some older war games in like 50s and 40s had the action reaction mechanics, which brings a very intense kind of gameplay into the picture. And that's exactly what we wanted to do with the dungeon crawl experience.
Right.
We didn't want it to be like, steamrolling through a dungeon with your heroes. We wanted it to be intense. We wanted it to be immersive. And especially because we were basically growing up with MMORPGs. Things like that. We were always, we from the start we wanted to make like an experience where you could have an adventure, basically a war game happening, in a concealed environment, not necessarily a dungeon, but something that has narrow pathways and a lot of narrative for you to play, for you to to discover and explore and fight on and so on. So yeah.
We also, you mentioned MMORPGs, but I think more to do with this is D&D, so Dungeons and Dragons.
Definitely.
we also took inspiration from that because we're actually playing a campaign in our setting. Of course,
in the Eldfall Chronicles setting.
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay, cool.
Yeah, we have a very cool dungeon master. And,
Not me, Tjaša and Aljaž have like a very dedicated group of fellow players here from Slovenia, and together they are like another player. None of us is dungeon master. There's another player here from Slovenia who basically is dungeoneering the whole.
Oh wow! So we may see an Eldfall Chronicles D&D RPG in the future as well.
Maybe.
We tested it out and it works.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So when I think of a dungeon crawler, then I think of, like you say, tiles where you're laying the dungeon out. Players are controlling heroes. There's monsters to fight, dice rolling. But you say with Northern Wind that you've tried to keep it quite close to the sort of main core mechanics for the core game. So could you perhaps go through some of the mechanics, like combat? Exploration is something that normally crops up in dungeon crawlers, and maybe the reaction mechanic, how that would work in a dungeon crawler as well.
Definitely. Let me start with the action reaction mechanics that basically work the same. Your heroes will be getting activation points as they do in the skirmish game, and the monster will be getting them as well. So that's one thing. Combat will be still tied to action reaction mechanics based on activation points. So in that sense, things will not be much different, meaning that, your models will still activate. They will move first, and then they can do some actions. These actions can be still the same as in the skirmish game: attack, dodge, or something else. Like we have different stuff, like even for summoning monsters and so on. And the monster will mostly react in the same way as they do otherwise. So you move, the monster sees you, the monster reacts in a certain way, and then you perform your action. That will in a sense be combat. Melee combat stays the same, range combat stays almost the same. It's even a bit more simplified, but it feels the same.
It's the same, but it's simplified, generally speaking.
It's I guess, because the tiles give us some boundaries and so on. We could simplify these things, but happy to say that it still has the same kind of depth.
It feels familiar enough for players of the core game. They're still using D20s. That's something that Eldfall Chronicles uses, D20s, and quite often you're rolling off against the opposing player or the AI and comparing scores that you roll on your dice with the stats that are on your profile card.
Exactly.
And you're still doing that in the dungeon crawler. So the combat is really, really intense in the skirmish game. So that sounds like a really, really cool mechanic to bring across to a dungeon crawler as well. Quite often with dungeon crawlers, you're just rolling a handful of attack dice and looking for symbols, but here it's a bit more in depth, I guess, a bit more tactical.
Yeah. I mean, for people happy about symbols, we actually managed to incorporate a few.
Okay. So this is new then. So
yeah. I mean, of course, there will be like dungeon crawl cards, which will make your life simpler if you're playing just the dungeon crawl. But in a sense, they are interchangeable with everything else. I guess what we just sent is like the first look at the core box render. This is just the core box.
And there are things missing.
Yeah,
there's, I think, 3 miniatures missing here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be double the amount of cards that you see.
Yeah,
at least in the beginning.
That's definitely, and of course the quest book and rule book and stuff like that.
Well, I've seen something really, really cool on those pictures that you've just sent across. So, and so it's the scenery elements.
Yeah.
So in the Eldfall Chronicles core game, it came with some cardboard scenery that you could build your battlefields out of, which is really, really cool actually. And I've been playing dungeon crawlers like Descent, Legends of Dark, which comes with 3D scenery, and I think it really adds a lot to a dungeon crawler board game, a lot more than I thought it would. I've really enjoyed the Descent game with building the trees, the walls, the gates, and things. And I can see in these pictures here that you've also got that as well. So how does the scenery work? How can you interact with it? Does it block line of sight, this kind of thing?
Yeah, so what you see on the mock-up, basically these are like the key, like how you would say, like points of interest on the map, and you definitely can interact with them. For example, lanterns, basically the fire god, or in Japanese hinokami, are basically like checkpoints. So
the lamps contain the hinokami.
Yeah. the fire god resides in them.
Yeah.
So those will be your checkpoints, and at the same time you can level and do stuff like that next to them. Then we have the, the Torii gates. So basically the gates that mark sacred kind of grounds, or well, in this case, how would say corrupted grounds? I guess so.
So in the inspiration in the actual Japanese culture tradition is when you enter a sacred ground, you have to pass under the Torii gate. So that's the red gate that you see on the picture. And after that, after that is the sacred place. But in this case, you will be entering from a sacred place, because where you'll be entering the quest from is going to be like a neutral zone that you can do other things at. However, when you'll be on the tiles, you will be actually playing the quest, and the quests are dangerous. So the quests are where the actual combat is happening. When you're off the tiles, you can, for example, go into certain enclosed instances and fight instance battles. So like arena battles, I guess you could call them. Or you could resolve so-called events.
So basically, like how the narrative campaign would go in this case. The adventurers start as survivors of something, of a bad event that happened on the mission, and they still need to get to the top of the mountain, to take care of something. I'll try to keep it spoiler free as much as possible. But basically, what our adventurers are doing, in 13 days, they need to get to the top of the Mount Byodo. This is the mountain where the calamity is happening and where Onis are settled.
So the adventurers can, and the whole empire of Soga can see like a beam of light coming from atop the mountain, and the mountain has split at the top. So there's definitely something going on there, and that's why they regrouped underneath the mountain, assembled like a small, I guess, skirmish army, you could call it. Like how many people?
Let's call it around 70 people.
Yeah, like a smaller army. They've made their encampments, and then suddenly, just when they thought they were going to, take the
Start
advance,
the expedition.
Yeah, start the expedition, start the war on the Oni, they got ambushed. The whole, I guess, military encampment got ambushed.
Oni basically proved smarter than they thought they were.
Yeah. And from then on, the 4 heroes that you can see are your main heroes that escape from the ambush. Well, escape. Let's say they go into the hell pit and up the mountain because they know they have to go up there. Somebody has to go up there because something bad is happening.
Basically, they need to reach the top before the blood moon.
Yeah.
So that's
your sort of starting quest, is that's the main objective of them, right?
You're gonna learn like this through like short stories and lore descriptions before the quests, and then you will go on quests, and each quest will bring you closer to your goal. However, you don't have one storyline. You have at least 2 storylines that you can take.
3 actually.
Yeah, 3. Okay. And you can choose which one you will take.
At least those are main storylines.
So is this like almost like a branching campaign that you can go down as you play the game? Okay.
Yeah. So, and you won't really know which one is the best one. Or let's say all of them are quite okay.
They all have special challenges.
They also have special challenges. Some are more combative, some are less, some are more lore-based.
Some have more Onis and some have more undead.
Yeah, for example.
Okay, interesting.
So it depends. And if you would replay the campaign, you would find something new every time. Yeah, and the event cards I sent you before are the events that happen between each quest. So before you enter another quest, you will be doing the event. Like in similar dungeon crawlers, I guess, you get an event and you get a description of the event. So basically it tells you what is happening right now, what the adventurers are seeing. And then when you read the description, you would, together with the other players, if you're playing cooperatively, so if there's multiple players playing together, you can together decide which, I guess, answer you want to take, how you would want to resolve this event. And then depending on what you choose, different things will happen. And you will only see the resolutions after you decide. So basically, you will look them up in a special booklet called the quest log.
Okay.
And yeah, then you will see if you made the good, the bad, the neutral decision, and so on.
I guess just to give a bit more context, so there will be like a time. So the resource that players will have to manage throughout the whole campaign is time. And what they do, basically the players need to get to the top of this mountain in a certain number of days. And what that means,
otherwise the blood moon happens.
Yeah, but let's leave that aside for now. What basically people are doing in this case, they will be playing series of battles. There will be like approximately 20 battles for you to get to the top of the mountain. And in between the battles, they need to travel the mountain, of course. And this is when these events happen. So basically, it's events that happen on their journey. And these are not necessarily combat events. It can be like riddles and things like that. And this is what Tjaša was referring, that you have to look in the quest log. So some cards will have riddles, some which you will have to look up, and they can have many different effects. Like they can give you items, they can give you valor, which is basically the resource player will be using for leveling and things like that. Other than that, they can do many different things. They can speed up the time, which is not ideal for you. They can present you different decisions, or they can actually influence the upcoming battles.
Yeah, or they can just flung you into a battle.
Yeah.
That can also happen. So I mentioned instance battles before. So basically, between quests, you can enter an arena battle, so like an instance battle.
For example, Goblins Ambush you or something like that.
Yeah, and you're suddenly taken away to one of the bigger tiles that you can see on the picture of the prototype. Yeah, it's like the big tile. That's the arena battle.
The snowy, looks like a snowy battlefield.
Yeah. I mean, like all the tiles are actually modular, so you can place them however you like. But yeah, we would prefer using like the big tiles for such instantaneous encounters. And yeah, like these events, some are worse than others. Some can be positive, and it really depends. Their effects are like all over the place, so it will give you like it will give you a feeling like you're on an actual adventure.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. So just for the listeners of our podcast who aren't watching the video, then, so some of the events we got here, there's a fox shrine. So you stumble upon a shrine dedicated to the fox spirit. The shrine appears to have been abandoned for years, but strange things start happening as soon as the adventurers arrive. You notice that the shrine is possessed, and then you get an option here to purify the shrine or ignore the shrine. And that's where you say then you would, as a party, decide what you wanted to do, and then you would check this extra booklet, which would then tell the story of the repercussions of that decision that you've made.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, excellent. So this one is like, you can, if you ignore it, nothing happens because there's no booklet sign on the right. But if you purify, there's a booklet sign. So you have to refer to the booklet and it will tell you what happens.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, sometimes there will be like extra instructions in the booklet. So you're gonna have to roll a d20 to see if you passed, for example, an intelligence check, agility check, and so on.
Yeah, and we'll be including 50 of such cards already in the core box.
I was just going to ask, how many of these kind of sorts? Oh, interesting.
So
and sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, and these cards, this just helps sort of expand the background, the setting, and adds a bit of context to what you're actually doing in the game.
So if you're playing a campaign, that will give you a lot of lore, insights, theme, and everything in between. So there will be 50 cards, meaning that replayability of like a campaign is basically,
and this is
infinite.
This is before stretch goals, so we intend to add more if the stretch goal unlocks and so on. And as you can see, each one is illustrated, so we hope they also give you visual cues, lore.
I'd recommend anyone listening or watching the video head over to your website. You've got some great resources on there, but you've got lots of artwork as well. And I know on the core game, on the profile cards, the scheme cards and things, there's lots of really interesting artwork. Even the box art is really, really interesting. And I can see here on these event cards that you've shown here, it looks like that's carrying on as well. So that's really, really cool to see. You mentioned a campaign. So this dungeon crawler is going to allow you to play a campaign. Your party's trying to get to the top of the mountain before the blood moon.
That's the narrative part of it, yes.
Yeah. So obviously, as a dungeon crawler, players generally control a hero and they're generally fighting bad guys. So can you talk a bit about the heroes that will be included in the box and how they tie into the factions that we know from the core game?
Okay.
And then who are their main opponents? So you've mentioned the
Sure.
Oni. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about the bad guys as well.
Maybe just to add a little bit of context quickly so that I don't forget. So in the Northern Wind, of course, like narrative campaign is completely, as you pointed out, you will be playing heroes and so on. But at the same time, we want to introduce like, quick standalone scenarios where, so in the narrative quests, we will give the instructions on how to, put together a, combat map where you're battling and so on. But we are also doing like a randomized, exploration kind of scenario.
Oh, wow.
Where you as a player, are discovering the tiles and so on. And that will be done through a randomized deck of the tiles.
So like a build your own adventure type game.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So if you want to have like a quick, completely, independent, standalone campaign or just a quick
Just
battle,
quest, yeah.
you can definitely do that. And so
Okay.
yeah, in that case, you can play like a competitive or cooperative scenario, however you like. But yeah, okay.
So back to the question.
Yeah. The heroes.
In Northern Wind, you have 4 heroes. You can substitute them with other models from, Eldfall Chronicles, the base game, or anything else. However, we recommend these 4 because each one has lore and the background. And you can find this lore on our webpage already, but we'll be adding more in the actual campaign. So when you start off with the 4 heroes, you'll notice that each one is from one of their own factions. So in Eldfall Chronicles, the setting itself, we have the world called Kalad, and it has 4 dominant factions that are also shown on the map. So in the north, you have the Empire of Soga. Then you have in the east the coalition. No, in the east the coalition of Tinion. In the west, sorry, in the west the Sand Kingdoms, and then the south is the Hylian League. Yeah. So each hero is from one of these factions. You have Anari. She's from Hylion. Then you have Nara. She's from Sand Kingdoms. However, she's from the sub-faction of Sand Kingdoms, which is the Oasis. We haven't introduced this one yet.
The Valley of Life, yeah.
Small spoiler. Then from Tinion, you have Taros and his Batu. This is the Stargaze hawk, yeah, the bird. And then from the Emperor of Soga...
we have Sagan.
Yeah, we have Sagan. And you play these 4 heroes. So you don't have to play all 4 of them at once, but we do recommend it, I guess. You get certain perks if you do. We also recommend you playing with a friend if you can. So, for example, when we were testing out the game, we really like to play 2 characters per each player. So, for example, me and Žiga would be playing against the game, going on the campaign, and I would pick Nara and Anari, and he would choose Sagan and Taros. So yeah, this is how we would, for example, divide them.
Or if like multiple players were playing, like when we were playing, for example, with Aljaž and Samo, each of us had like 1 character, and it was perfect, basically. Because, our characters are not, I guess, they have a lot of abilities and so on. So here in such case, it really feels nice when you have 1 character and you can really, delve deep into it, really learn the play style and so on of the character.
I found with the core game as well, there's often quite a lot of synergies between the models in your warband. Is that the same here? So the heroes work well together. There may be a hero that's more suited for a traditional sort of tanking role, a hero that's more supportive, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
exactly. That's how the characters are. So as you mentioned, like we can give you like a brief like how they are played in gameplay, maybe like a short intro for each. So one important thing for the dungeon crawler is that you as a player will be able to customize heroes inventory and things like that. It will be up to you what kind of weapons you pick. Of course.
So not just potions and trinkets, also weapons as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So of course, like characters will have like how you could say a designated weapon, but you can definitely change it for something else if you prefer a different kind of playstyle.
Except if it's predetermined. So, for example, some models
at level 1, their things are a bit predetermined, but the more you level your character, the more open it is.
Well, no, I mean, for example, Anari, She has the arcane monocle. It's her own invention. She basically invented like this monocle that gives her insight into the future for like 3 seconds.
For the next 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's a lot actually. And I guess you wouldn't really want to get rid of that. So you can't change some things, but you can change most of their inventories, especially as they level. And yeah, this is another point we want to make. The characters level, and you have so-called valor points that you gain throughout the campaign. And you can spend these valor points on leveling the characters, buying new items for them, other things that I guess would benefit you, but I'm not going to get too deep into it.
Or rather, you sacrifice valor for obtaining items that you take from the small offering shrines along the way.
Yeah, you can still. So the resource is called valor. So like, I guess a good person would have a lot of it, or like a courageous person would have a lot of valor. In the same sense, in the game, you gain valor by doing good deeds, I guess.
And felling Onis and undead and stuff like that.
Or like vanquishing enemies. However, you can also sacrifice valor to do some less honorable deeds. For example, stealing. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Taking stuff from shrines and things like that.
Which you shouldn't do.
Oh, interesting. And I wonder, does that your sort of standing, your valor, influence some of the events and narrative elements as well? So you may stumble across something that may only be an option to you if you've got a sufficient valor. Or really cool. So you've definitely got choices as a player going through the campaign then about how you want to play the game. So that's really, really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was one big thing, like to test players' kind of like decisions.
I already know what Dave and Matt from the Swissroom and Andy, what they're going to do. We're going to have no valor in our run for, I'm sure.
Everyone next level, but zero valor.
Well, they're Warhammer Chaos players, Matt and Andy are, so they're sort of, they lean that way anyway. So
then it makes perfect sense. Yeah. But like a little bit about the characters. So let's start with Anari, the Hellion character. So she's a Helrin, meaning that she, of course, has like a natural affinity for fire, and as well as ice, due to her like she's being half Tenrin and half Helrin. So she's a bit different when it comes to her. I will not go into her backstory because like it's a bit too much. Maybe the half of it was already online. So
I was going to say it's all on the website. That's quite substantial. Yeah.
But in any case, she will be like quite toolboxy battle mage, if I can put it like that. She'll be able to at the same time protect your characters a bit through enchantments and things like that, or buff them, but at the same time she can do like sufficient damage from afar, but she is a glass cannon in that sense, so it's best to keep her protected.
And interestingly, she's got access to ice magic, which is a new sort of school of magic that's been introduced.
Cryomancy, a new thing coming in this campaign. And then we have Nara. Nara is she's a chimera. So she's from the tribe of Mau, which is basically cat people in a sense, meaning that she has certain abilities that are specific to chimeras. Chimeras have like huge scope of abilities, like Kitsune have like a lot of fire magic and stuff like that. Mau, for example, have two important things. One is that they can alter their physique to an extent. That's why like on the art she has like cat paws. But like
legs on the tail.
Yeah, meaning that's because she can like shift halfway into a cat form and so on. So it's not necessary that she's always like this for people who want to roleplay stuff. But at the same time, it means that she can be very powerful in melee, but also because of her special abilities, she has certain levels of necromancy. But it's not an evil kind of necromancy. What she can do is take over the undead and have them fight for you, or even release them. So she is in a sense like an anti-undead model, but also like a brawler kind of a model. So not the toughest when it comes to survivability, but she's a very nice like cleanup piece, to take out things that are already tied up, exhausted, and so on. So she'll be moving a lot back and forth because she's super fast. and yeah, like she's a blast to play. Then we have, and definitely she is something that typical Sand Kingdom doesn't have. So that will be something.
Yeah, so Sand Kingdoms is one of the core factions.
Mhm.
Mostly spellcasters.
Yeah.
Not the toughest or strongest melee combatants generally. They sort of
Yeah.
rely on their casting abilities
Yeah.
and their summons. They can summon elementals to sort of do the combat for them and protect
Yep.
them. So yeah, so this character then obviously was useful for players of Eldfall Chronicles as well. So
Yeah.
We want to do a lot of like basically cross appearance of things. So for example, Nara at the later stage, she will be able to summon like Earth Elemental and things like that. Maybe just a quick spoiler. Okay, yeah, but if I'm moving on, then we of course have Sagan. Sagan will be kind of our viewpoint character for the campaign, since like the thing is happening in the Empire. We
His
saw,
home country.
yeah, we saw it
Or
fitting
area.
that. Yeah,
so
yeah.
these are the Empire Soga are probably the most recognized as the Japanese sort of inspired faction with
Yeah.
the samurai and that
Yeah.
kind of quite a military focused faction.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, Sagan is a big representative of that. What he is a so-called Keshobarai, which in translation would be something akin to an exorcist or monster hunter. And basically what he is doing, he will be the tank of the party. That's one. And at the same time, a protector. So it will give Soga a fine, very, very sturdy tank with like things like those ceiling javelins on his back, things he uses like for purifying undead things and so on. But at the same time, he is wielding a Nagamaki, so basically a long hilted sword, in a sense, meaning that it brings him something in between halfway, like Onitaoshi and having certain like, well, not really magical, but like he has more abilities like to deal with magical things. And as well as the cursed bear pelt that he is wearing, his heirloom, like that protects him a bit from magic and stuff like that. So he'll be a very interesting playing piece, both in Dungeon Crawler, because he'll be basically protecting and tanking everything, and as well as in skirmish, because
He doesn't sound like much fun for a Sand Kingdoms player, to be
yeah,
fair.
he shouldn't. But yeah, he'll be a lot of fun for play. And then of course we have Taros and his trusty bird Batu. What he brings to the play is toolbox. He is as you can see, he has a lot of bags hanging from him, so he is essentially a toolbox of the party.
He's a walking toolbox.
He's a walking toolbox. But what he actually is, he's an alchemist and a rogue. What that means, alchemist gives him ability to replenish consumables, and rogue will tie very nicely in his ability of knocking down things for other people to take off. And yeah, he'll be having you as a player playing him will have a lot of freedom choosing his consumables, so you can really decide. He could be like a medic kind of character that can heal up your incapacitated models, or you can use him like an area denial piece, and throwing caltrops all over the place, throwing bombs around, smoking the place. So
Sleep gas.
sleep gas and stuff like that.
So even within the four characters, there's various different play styles you can sort of build.
Yeah,
Each one has a different one, I would say.
I think each character has around, I would say, 3 different play styles you can take the character in. And yeah, definitely will give you a lot of options. And all are quite good. Like we are still deliberating how exactly to do it best in skirmish. All these characters will appear in the skirmish game as well. We just are deciding like what would be the most appropriate way to introduce them in the most balanced way possible, but at the same time that they feel as characters, meaning that they will definitely have leader options, meaning they will
stratagems.
yeah.
Strategy, yeah.
But otherwise, we are determining how much we want to enclose, the options you have, playing them in skirmish. But of course, there will be a blast to play in the dungeon crawler.
Oh, no, that sounds really, really cool. Really, really cool. So they're your heroes.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned the Oni, and I've seen some great artwork for the Oni and some of the sort of previews of the sculpts as well. Undead. I wasn't aware there was an undead enemy as well to fight. So maybe you can spend a bit of time talking about the two baddies that we're fighting.
Yeah. So the main villains, we could call them villains, are the Oni. What are exactly Oni? Oni are demons from the older age. So if I can give a bit of the lore background. So before the age of mortals and the age of elders, there was the age of gods. And what the gods did, they basically, each god created their own kind of war breed, the demons, which basically, did everything that was necessary to do in the name of that god. At some point, the gods were a bit overzealous with killing one another, which could lead to like a huge catastrophe, and that's why the elders had to be created to contain them. But while elders took care of the gods in one way or another, the demons still remain in this world. We already have demons like succubi, but succubi are a kind of peaceful demons. They are not like the Oni. Oni, on contrary, are like the brutish, like the violent kind of a demon, that did like the bad kind of stuff during their golden age. But when the elders came, they sealed away their god, and which also threw like a curse on them. And the curse was that basically they were kind of set in stone. They were petrified. But with the time, this curse started to wane off. And what happened, like every single winter, they started to wake up from their, like, how you would call it, the petrified slumber they are experiencing. And of course, like the entire curse made them deteriorate when it came to like how sentient they are. So like the weakest Oni are basically brutish beasts. You could say like 3 meters tall, ogres with horns and everything, basically thirsty for blood. But what happened? Like, I believe that Oni started waking up like approximately 120 years from the present time. And like that caused a lot of mysteries in the empire. Like, why are some villages suddenly dying out in the winter? Nobody, knew how to explain the disappearances and so on. But what started happening was that certain Oni, when they first discovered Oni, of course they knew like they're, vicious beasts. But what started happening through the time was that certain Onis were appearing to look more and more humanoid. And, through the ages, this basically came to a conclusion that, Onis start to resemble the food they eat.
That will explain where the villagers have gone.
Yeah. And like that basically means, so you have the normal Onis, the brutes, and then you have the so-called Rasetsu, which are basically Rakshasas from the Buddhist and Hindu mythos.
So the normal Onis, we call them Oni marauders.
Yeah.
And the red and blue Oni are I guess they're like mini bosses or bosses.
Yeah.
They're called Rakshasas because they are more like humans.
That's in the gameplay narrative, but basically what is lore-wise, their implication is that they're the evolved kind of Oni. So when they evolve, they basically are assigned with a certain color, which is a bit tied to their temperament and abilities. And yeah, they are definitely a step up from a normal Oni. So despite being like smaller in stature, they are much more powerful and much more vicious.
And much more sentient
and more
intelligent.
Sentient.
So the red Onis, they are more brutish, they're more violent, they like to take things head first,
More beastly in behavior.
Yeah, they don't think things through too much, but they make up for it with their power. And then you have the blue Oni. So the blue Oni are the strategists. They're the intellectuals.
The more cunning ones.
Yeah. Both can talk, by the way, the red and the blue Oni. And yeah, the problem with the Emperor of Solga was that until they didn't really know that these existed, right? So they saw the Oni marauders because they were more brutish. They just came down from the mountains, killed everyone they could, and just went back. The red Oni, which are more brutish,
they're more sadistic in nature.
Yeah, they're more sadistic,
they're
but
more like vanguards of the Oni.
That usually meant that they didn't really leave any witnesses behind.
Right.
And then the blue Oni, well, they probably weren't even seen because they were just too intelligent. And when the attack, so the offense to the Oni was planned, they didn't really know that the blue Oni existed yet.
As well as red, in a
Yeah,
sense.
in a sense, also the red one was a bit vague.
Basically, the blue one is what the strategist and tactician should be afraid of, while the red one is what the people on the front lines should be afraid of.
Yeah.
The warriors, I see.
Yeah. But in a sense, that all leads basically to their form, which is the Chiyohime, which is in the previous newsletter. She is like the the mastermind behind the Oni activities, and she could be considered. I will just post this plug from the last newsletter. But basically, she is like the pinnacle of the current Oni evolution. And she could be considered currently one of the oldest Oni probably alive, and the leader of basically the Oni tribe residing on this Mount Byodo. Of course, there are multiple mountains in the empire with Onis. This is just the one. I mean, this is just one of them. And what is special about her, as you can see with things behind her, she can wield magic as well as the undead. She will be like the necromancer kind of enemy that you'll be facing in the journey.
That's why you have so many undead enemies.
Yeah,
Explains it.
like a bit of trivia about Kalad. Like, so there is a circulation of mana in the world. That includes the profane mana, which like made a taint with the elders in the world. But what it actually happens, like when you have like a battlefield or a certain site of violence where a lot of people died, like profane mana can start to settle and accumulate in that area. And if that place is not purified after the battle, the undead will start rising there. And like this mountain is a perfect example of that, because like there was a lot of, like as I mentioned, villages and temples basically being abandoned overnight, not really abandoned, more like eaten. So a lot of undead remains started to wake up in those sites. Yeah.
So just to rephrase, these aren't really zombies, I guess. They're more like spirits. So in
both.
Yeah, both. In traditional Japanese actual culture, which we take inspiration from, Japan has thousands of different spirits or like apparitions, demons.
Basically, what they
else
call
would you-
yokai.
Yeah, they call
So
it yokai.
an
We don't
umbrella
really.
term for paranormal stuff.
Yeah, they're not always like spirits. Sometimes, for example, you have a spirit that is in the shape of a lamp, and when you approach it, it has a mouth. There's like spirits like that. So yeah, we because we can't really include them in the combat. Sometimes it just wouldn't make any sense. We included them on the event cards.
Yeah,
so
brilliant.
That's
Yeah,
yeah.
Like a mimic equivalent.
Yeah, that's really cool, because it just sort of fleshes out the sort of setting that you're playing the game in and adds a bit of context to it all. So that's really, and obviously there'll be people out there who are really interested in sort of that Japanese sort of fantasy sort of history and that kind of thing as well. So that's really cool. So there's quite. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Here I want to emphasize that I guess this game isn't just for people that know a lot about Japan. It's definitely for anyone, because you also have like vanilla things. They're not all Japan inspired, right?
Yeah, I mean, like there is a huge emphasis. Like it brings the theme of the whole thing. That is the Japanese setting. But apart from it, we will be including a lot of like other stuff that may excite people. I'm not sure. Like probably we can save it for later. Like small beasts people are used to, and as well as some like more eldritch abominations towards the end of the game. So there will be a lot like to chew on.
So there's a lot of variety in the sort of enemies that you'll be fighting from the different kinds of Oni, undead, necromancy, and then you mentioned there like eldritch monsters, and I think you mentioned goblins as well at some point earlier on. So cool. Oh no, that's really cool. I mean, that also I think as well in a dungeon crawler, it can keep the game quite interesting. I think if you're fighting the same enemies each quest, each turn, it can get a bit repetitive. So it's nice to know that there's lots of variety there in the sort of enemies and challenges that you're going to have, because it sounds like as well some of the creatures you're fighting have different sort of tactics and strategies you have to use to counter them. The more brutish sort of Oni, you'll be engaging in melee or trying to keep them at a distance, whereas the more cunning and the blue Oni sound like you may need to use some other tactics to try and combat or even find the guy by the sound of it.
Definitely. Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh.
I mean, you have like different kinds of levels to the enemies, I guess you could say. So you have enemies that are like cannon fodder, so they're like common mobs,
It's
right?
basically tiers, how you already know them. Like all earthen creatures already have tiers, and
Yes.
so have the Oni and the other enemies you'll be encountering. And here is to know that like you can include like the earthen creatures in this campaign as well if you'd like. The game, the setting, and like the mechanics are very open, like to what kind of enemies you can face.
Now, see, I'm more interested in including the Oni in the core game.
Yeah.
That definitely that is also a big thing.
So they'll actually be a playable faction in the skirmish.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
Since they are super powerful, the mechanics they will, I guess, be a bit different than like a traditional party. Meaning that they will have certain different kind of mechanics how you bring them to play. But yeah, they will be played like as a playable faction.
That just highlights the sort of compatibility between the two different games that you're sort of building. That's really cool.
Yeah. Because we want to build a setting, like we want to build Eldfall Chronicles as a world, not just as like a separate game here and there. We actually want to make like a setting that you can immerse into like in multiple different ways. That's of huge importance to us. So yeah, definitely.
So to summarize, each miniature that you see will have different profile cards. One will be for the dungeon crawler and one will be for the skirmish, or rather multiple will be for the dungeon crawler and multiple for the skirmish, because every miniature might have different levels or different variations on their profiles and so on. That's how they're compatible, I guess. We're also every other card that you know from the Eldfall Chronicles, the base game, is going to be remade to adapt to the dungeon crawler and vice versa.
Technically, you don't need to. Like we already also included like how to convert like movement distance for dungeon crawler if you don't like that. But we, just because I think it's the right way to do it, we will be like having, profile cards for dungeon crawler for every single model existing, freely available online. And will, of course, included in the campaign.
Cool. And will there also be rules for using characters from the core game in the dungeon crawler as well?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So there's lots of options there, lots of variety across the two.
Definitely.
Yeah.
In like the second, like the campaign, you could break it down to like 3 arcs. In the second arc, you'll start encountering like also you as a side quest and so on. So it's an optional thing. If you don't have the core game, like you're not missing anything. But at the same time, like if you already have other stuff, it will unlock a lot of side quests for you to explore, and different characters can come helping you in later quests and so on. So yeah, that's definitely one thing to explore.
It's really, really, really cool. So we've talked a bit there about the heroes and the enemies and the game, the mechanics, how the dungeon crawler plays. We've talked a lot about the background and the setting. It sounds really, really exciting. The next sort of thing that I look for in a dungeon crawler and a dungeon crawler box game is the components. So you've talked about the tiles and the cards we get, but the main thing people will be interested in will be the miniatures themselves. So what can you tell us about the miniatures and the sculpts?
So I guess an important thing that I'm also very proud of to say, the miniatures will not be PVC like in most board games. The miniatures will be our premium Unicool resin miniatures, meaning that it will be, minis of the highest quality, made of resin, durable resin, new generation resin, however you like to call it, retaining like the highest detail we can make.
So what I want to point out here, Unicool resin is a new kind of resin that was invented for miniatures, originally for our miniatures. Now it's getting used in other games as well, probably.
Including Infinity for one.
Yeah, I think they're actually going to go with them. And it's received as a new kind of resin that is more durable. So if you know how a standard resin looks like, it's usually very brittle. If it falls over on the table, it usually breaks or something.
Especially when we talk about 3D printing resin.
Yeah, But also the manufactured one isn't much different.
That wasn't suitable for us, so the manufacturers went like an extra mile basically to make a new formula.
Yeah.
Um,
Also, another good part about it is we have very dynamic miniatures with a lot of details or like parts that are sticking out from the miniature. These usually wouldn't be able, we wouldn't be able to make these in other materials
or
because
we would have a hard time making
we would
that,
have
yeah.
a hard time, or we would have to redo the poses, the dynamics, and so on. Because the other molds, for example, metal molds, don't really allow
They
such.
don't allow undercuts and things like that.
Yeah, they don't allow such dynamic poses. Meanwhile, we use silicone molds, which allow us to do a lot more dynamic poses.
And actually a completely traditional method of doing resin. It's not like some special kind of machine doing something. It's basically, you know, two-piece silicone mold and a guy using a ladle to pour in the liquid resin.
They're basically handmade, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything is handmade.
Yeah. In a sense.
It's just this new material that you're using that's allowing you to create these detailed the miniatures in this new resin. Yeah, I mean, will they be comparable then to the miniatures that people will already have received or can purchase online on your store now for Eldfall Chronicles? So it's the same material.
They will be of
same
the same
quality,
material.
if not better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Like the material is constantly improving. We already received the Wayfarers, as I mentioned, and in my opinion, these are like a small step up from the first edition. Meaning that like, yeah, from here on, we just want to improve the whole thing even further as much as we can. But yeah, when it comes to the Northern Wind and the miniatures, yeah, they will be made of the Unicorn resin. That's one. The exact number, how many of the minis you get, really depends on the pledge tier. The core box will include, I do not have exact numbers in front of me right now, but I think it will be like 14 miniatures, 15, I think. I'm not entirely sure. But that includes like the big, more brutish Oni.
I was going to say what kind of size, because in the core game you had the normal sort of scale miniatures right the way up to your Colossus, which was your tier 3 Earth and Elemental. Is there going to be different size miniatures in this game as well?
Yeah, definitely. Like the brutish. I mean, most of minis are the standard size, the medium sized, the heroes and all that. Then you have a few small things.
So the medium size miniatures are usually in the 32 scale.
32 millimeter. They have 32 millimeter base, but like the actual scale, I have no idea what nowadays is what scale.
No, I get confused by it all as well.
Yeah, but
these miniatures from Eldfall, I would say they're slightly bigger than a Games Workshop Warhammer miniature.
I think they're about as tall as a Primaris Space Marine.
Yeah,
or
but they're a bit more realistically scaled, I find. Yeah. So they look a bit more realistic in their proportions and things than a Warhammer miniature would. And they're also very detailed. So they are, if you are just a collector and a painter, these are really, really nice models just to paint up and not just to play with, I found. So
please give them a try.
Another thing I would want to point out here is that they come in less pieces, so you don't have to assemble it for too long. So for example, our miniatures are so detailed and dynamic that in other materials we would have to divide them into like
more pieces.
Yeah, more pieces. But then with this new material, we only have to divide them into a few pieces. So for example, 2 to 5 pieces is the norm.
I mean, it really depends. Like, yeah, I mean, sure, like you have push fit, hard plastic and stuff like that. That typically doesn't take that many pieces, but at the same time, like the poses aren't really that dynamic and so on. I would argue, like, not necessarily, but yeah, I mean, that's just one point. So they are not difficult to put together. I think that's the main point Tjaša wanted to make here. But yeah, otherwise the core box I think will be coming with around 14, 15 miniatures. I'm not sure. You will have like the big Oni included. They are approximately Earth Elemental sized, something like that. A bit bigger than Golem and like a bit taller than Earth Elemental. So like, yeah, something big for you.
Like I would say for our Warhammer fans listening, like a killer can size, then that would be a Gretchen killer can.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh, so that's cool. So they'll look really nice on
Yeah.
the sort of tabletop then.
But other than that, like there will be a few things we'll be adding. It will be, of course, tied to the pledge tiers and, of course, add-ons and stuff like that, like the Kickstarter vocabulary. But otherwise, one thing will be like a small expansion with multiple enemies, I think 7 or 8. And the other thing is maybe a bit secret one, bigger miniature.
Much bigger.
Much bigger, like Colossus size, if not a bit bigger. And yeah, that will be like, we'll talk about that a bit later, I guess.
Okay, interesting. Well, now we're on to the Kickstarter campaign, so it's a good segue into that. So
Yeah.
this, you mentioned, was it the 23rd of June, 20th of June?
20th of June, yeah.
20th of June is when the Kickstarter campaign will launch. And you mentioned there may be some different pledge offerings. So the core game with 14 or 15 miniatures, and then you mentioned a monster expansion or an enemy expansion as well.
Mhm.
So is there anything else you can tell us about the Kickstarter campaign? Any sort of stretch goals you can tell us about now? I know you may have some stretch goals you're holding back in secret, so obviously that's fine. But is there anything you can share with us now?
So generally,
I guess briefly.
I guess we can like get a general overview. With stretch goals, we'll be adding extra components of the ones that you already see. So more upgrade cards, which are the item cards, more event cards, more scheme cards, which are like the extra side quest cards, I guess. You also get extra tiles, extra boss tiles. Those are the biggest ones, the ones that you can play like in secluded quests. You will also, of course, get extra miniatures, alternative
extra
parts.
scenics, as you already pointed out.
Yeah,
like
extra scenics, yeah. And yeah, like alternative parts of certain minis.
As well as maybe some other goods that I don't want to really talk about too early, so that
Understandable.
it doesn't hit me back.
Trying to get the scoop here, but that's fine.
But yeah, like maybe just to give like a brief context about what you get in the core box. So we already mentioned the miniatures. Otherwise, you get more than 20 double-sided tiles. So that means that like plenty of like, straight normal tiles, then you have corners and, crossroads, things like that, but also like 2 double-sided, like bigger, like this big, I guess. Kind of arena tiles that will be used like, for encounters, boss battles, stuff like that. So that's for the tiles, like for the core game. Of course, like you will be able to purchase extra and so on if you really want to stretch out the table. But they have like, I think every single side of these tiles is unique. So there will be plenty of like variety with them, just as they are. And then you also have like things like environment tokens through which you can assign like certain environments to these tiles. Then you have like, of course, the standard tokens, the scenics. That covers the environment and terrain a bit, I guess. Then you have like the profile cards, of course, like the dungeon crawl cards, the event cards and the instance cards. I guess the instant cards are something that we didn't talk about. Instance cards will be something like at the beginning of each enemy turn, an instance resolves. And instance, what it does, it basically triggers something unpredictable with the enemies or the environment, or maybe even with your heroes. So that will be just one extra thing for you to consider when you play the game. Okay, then moving along, then of course you will get like a quest map, like so that you will have like an actual map of how you are going on the mountain with all the key points, all the battles marked out, so you can choose like the best, path to the top of the mountain. Then you will be having like, of course, the rulebook for the dungeon crawl rules, which just for people who are, a bit scared of the rules, if you already know the skirmish rules, almost all that you need to read extra is, I guess, how to start the game and how to move. And I think that basically covers it. And maybe, I guess, reach just to refresh it, how it works in a different kind of context. And then, then we have tokens, profile cards, AI cards, of course. We have multiple AI cards. The rulebook I already mentioned. And then we have the quest log. The quest log is basically almost like well, lore narrative mixed with quests, mixed with things like technical stuff, like how to resolve certain those events and stuff like that. So basically what players will be holding when playing the campaign and going through it.
And setting up quests.
Yeah, and of course the dice. Let's not forget the dice.
Of course, yeah.
An important part. Let me just quickly pop up the render if I forgot anything. Probably I forgot something, but I can't remember right now.
Well, there's a lot there to remember, to be fair.
Yeah, it will be quite a hefty core box, I think. We will probably have to increase the depth of the box a bit when compared to the current one, but we are doing our best to keep the prices as fair and as low as possible. So that's another commitment we want to make with this game. So yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that this is your second Kickstarter campaign, so you've got one successful Kickstarter under your belt already. What lessons did you learn from that Kickstarter that you're taking through into the next Kickstarter?
A lot.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah.
Simply put, when going into the previous campaign, you could say that we maybe were a bit like, we were green, we were rookies, we were a bit naive, and we took a bad timing. And
also we were rushing it.
We were rushing it a bit too much, like you could say that pressure from relatives and so on. But in any case, we maybe were a bit too hasty with the campaign. We should have taken more time, like, putting the game into the world, presenting it, getting the outreach. Other than that, the timing was super important. Like, we went to Kickstarter probably in the worst time possible, because at the same time there was like the Witcher campaign going live. There was like,
ironically, I'm wearing
but
it's the PC game, so there's that.
Other than that, we had there was like multiple skirmish games like going live at that point of time. Of course, by more, I think that one was Oathsworn, which was a big thing. And of course, these were the games.
Got that on the shelf somewhere,
Oathsworn. Yeah. And of course, this was like the games, with the already tested creators. Meaning that we should and we are be super thankful to the backers who decided to support us, basically a green creator, and put the trust in us that we will be actually able to deliver it. Because like at the same time, yeah, sure, it was like a campaign, but it was also like a huge ambitious project. Like we were really making something new. And yeah, I'm super thankful to everyone.
Especially with the material of the miniatures, yeah.
Yeah, and I am super thankful to everyone who supported us, believed in us, and made possible for us to make the game,
And our company.
Yeah, and our company, basically, I would argue being better than what we first advertised on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And of course, now we know, like when we went on Kickstarter the last time, there was like so many hiccups behind the scenes. It's incredible that even we were even able to like pull it off till the end. So one big thing was the whole start of the campaign. Like the Kickstarter was just changing something behind their algorithm, and you had to write in the shipping costs.
Not the algorithm, but their UI.
Their UI, yeah. And they were like you couldn't leave it blank. How much approximately you think the game, you will need to ship the game. So yeah, of course we went like, yeah, okay, this is approximate number, boom. And like campaign started, and people were like, wait, is this campaign like calculating shipping for me? And we were like, it shouldn't. And they were like, but it is. And we were like, okay, so what to do? What the hell? And we were writing to Kickstarter, like, can you help us? And what we got in return, we can help you in 90 hours.
99 hours.
99 hours. And we're like, okay, we're dead. And yeah, we had to like improvise a bit, close the pledges, ask the people if they could shift the pledges to something else, close those. And that basically definitely staggered the momentum a lot. Yeah. We definitely don't want this to happen again, so we are taking extra caution with that.
But I think also like the general outlook of the campaign, this time around it will be better.
Yeah.
Things I hope will be a bit more easy to understand.
And at that time we had zero real experience with like the manufacturing. One is manufacturing, then the logistics and so on. So we went through basically everything, I think, like It's a bit of behind the scenes and oversharing, I guess, but like we changed a few parties who offered those services like logistics or manufacturing and so on. And maybe just like, basically it was after the campaign when we actually, got in contact and really like started to take off things with the Unicool manufacturing. So they came after the campaign, like the manufacturer basically who was working with us before the campaign. Well, they really disappointed us afterwards. Like it was really hard to work with them, and they weren't really manufacturers. They were. That's something you figure out later. It was basically just a liaison, working with the factory. But now we are actually working directly with the factory. That's one. We are working with a factory that's very experienced in what they are doing. They have more than 20 years of experience with these things. And even before that, they've been working with, established like Japanese brands making like anime figures, the collectible stuff, and so on.
Right.
So they are amazing when
Hello
it comes.
Kitty.
Okay, Hello Kitty is one, but then of course like things like Bandai Namco and things like that. The worst possible example.
It's the one I remember.
But like, yeah, they did a lot of things, and yeah, they really wanted to try out how to do the miniatures and stuff like that. They actually work with some of the most known board games before. I'm not sure how much I can tell about that direction, so I won't.
Yeah.
But like, they have like a ton of experience. They are probably one of the best, if not the best.
And in the end, they even helped us a lot with logistics.
Yeah.
So I guess Žiga was a bit hasty to say all of these things. We did plan everything out before the campaign.
That we did, yeah.
And everything was figured out.
But no plan survives the contact with the enemy.
Exactly. And then when we actually started to go into the manufacturing phase, we noticed that the manufacturer or the liaison was completely incompetent, if I can put it in a nice way.
We started spinning in circles.
Yeah, we just couldn't get anywhere for months. And then we just had to pull the plug. We got, actually, Unicool contacted us.
Mm-hmm.
We were like a bit, hesitant at first. But then we actually
we decided like, let's give them a try and see where this goes. And they've proven like, well, competent beyond belief.
I mean, they've given us nothing but green lights. So
yeah.
It's
in the entire process of working with them is amazing. Maybe it helps a bit because both me and Tjaša, basically we studied East Asian studies, so maybe we have a bit like an easier entry when working with Asian cultures and so on. But at the same time, the guys are amazing. Like they're super
friends.
kind. Their customer support is amazing, and yeah, it's almost like working with a friend.
Yeah.
They are friends, in my opinion, at this point after 2 years.
So that sounds like you've got some good foundations there for going into the second campaign then. So
yeah, I mean that also, means that manufacturing is covered as well as logistics. Logistics is, I think that most creators underestimate how these things can like make the campaign successful or kill it behind the scenes. Like many campaigns can look extremely successful, but when it comes to logistics, it can kill the campaign entirely. And that's like a huge part where a couple of really successful distributors helped out, both locally as well as abroad. And we found some really competent companies we can work with. There were a few hiccups in the Europe, which forced us to basically establish our own fulfillment for now. We are already using it for the web store, and it's working super smoothly, meaning that next time we can probably fulfill the entire Europe well from Slovenia. As well as we established very like good, freight and the global logistics lines, how to get stuff from China to Slovenia or other continents. So that's another huge thing. Basically, one thing that I lost my hair over, but in the end it worked out, and we have that now, well, under our belt, if I can say that way.
Yeah, these are all the things that, like you say, you don't, as a backer, you don't necessarily appreciate all the hard work that goes in behind these campaigns. But
yeah, I mean, it's better that backers don't know how these things are. They would be as stressed as we are with these things. But yeah, it's a super important behind the scenes thing. Definitely something that will speed up the entire process, because we do feel confident that we can actually pull that. Like I could say like that, without stretch goals, I think we could have the game like manufactured and ready for delivery probably a couple of months after the campaign.
Yeah.
But we want, to include extra content and polish it, to our best as possible. So
I mean, basically, so in comparison with the first campaign, at the end of it, we had most of the things kind of ready visually, but they had to be adapted to be manufactured.
Yeah.
So I guess this is like really in depth into the manufacturing process. But for example, all the graphics that you see, for example, how the core box looks, that has to be like made into certain, what would you call
Format.
it? Yeah, into a certain format, and then you have to send it to the manufacturer, and then he has to approve it and so on. And that, it sounds easy, but it can take several months to get right.
Not everything is possible, and basically what we as a publisher and game designers, what we need to do is work with the manufacturing to basically make it possible, to find to troubleshoot everything, to put out the best product as we can.
Yeah, to ensure the best quality and I guess the lowest price, so that we don't have to unexpectedly, hike up the prices or overburden backers and so on.
Of course, there are some things we got a few funny comments, people misunderstanding the core box. Before opening it, commenting on it oh, but it's smaller than expected and so on, despite really knowing what's inside. But there are multiple things to consider here. The main one being global logistics and how to get things safely to the backer.
So just when we started the Kickstarter and when we started delivering and so on, planning for the delivery, the global, I guess, crisis was happening. It still is, in a way. And logistics
shipping was 10 times the normal price.
Yeah, it was
we saw that across a lot of Kickstarter campaigns.
Yeah, and I think that also killed a lot of, exactly. So we had to plan the cheapest way to get things across, and we didn't want to jeopardize the product itself
or the safety of the contents. So what we did, we adapted and we overcame things.
Yeah, we made the core box smaller, so it looks small, but it's compact.
Again, that would be one grievance. That's not really a grievance.
Yeah, we're actually planning to make the boxes bigger this time, a bit more flair to them.
So that people can basically, after they put stuff out, they can also pack
put
them back in.
Yes, the storage is important.
That was one of the things that we kind of regret.
You could do it already. We are actually in contact with Feldherr, working on a bit of storage solutions and so on, including for the core box itself. The one problem we are having is the Colossus, because the base is so big that
he's a big boy.
She's a big boy in case of the core box.
Yeah.
And you can't really close the box with her inside. So I think that's a bit problematic and something we didn't, foresee. But other things you can easily store back in the core box, and you can put in, instead of the punch boards and the the tug boxes and stuff like that, you just throw that out and put in the inserts and stuff like that, and you can definitely carry all the core components inside the core box.
Cool.
But the Colossus is problematic, those.
Its own storage for the Colossus,
Yeah, those Colossus things are problematic.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess another thing I can mention, what we want to do better in this campaign is the outreach. So we're really trying to get as many influencers, YouTubers, to talk about us, because we find that, for example, when we introduce our game to distributors and retailers, we actually are getting only positive comments about it. So we're getting really overwhelmingly positive reviews.
Which is
making us very happy, obviously.
A very nice colleagues, both locally and in the neighboring country. They're distributors, and they decided to help a lot with getting the game to be known across the retail network and so on. And we got really nice feedbacks from all over the places. And basically the consensus is that if people spend a few minutes with the game, they mostly fall in love with it. So we're happy,
especially if they enjoy other skirmish or war games,
or if they don't actually, they like RPGs and combat.
Yeah, well, this is what I was going to say. So I mean, we're big Warhammer fans at Sprues and Brews. We play a lot of Warhammer. We play a lot of the smaller scale Warhammer games as well, like Kill Team and Warcry. I'm personally a big fan of Infinity. And I love this game, and it was a game or two into it. It was really, really appealing. But like you say, the D&D element to it as well is also there. And then you've got the unique sort of, we've talked about it earlier, but the cooperative nature of it, the playing against the AI. It's a really, really cool game, and me and my brothers, we play it a lot, so we really, really love it.
Appreciate it.
So yeah, I think. The biggest problem with the previous campaign was the outreach. We think, well, and of course the rookie mistakes that came along, but anyways, we want to improve the outreach. Yeah.
I mean, that's really a problem. We are coming from a country with 2 million people.
Yeah. We're not, our location isn't the best, to be honest.
Oh, well, I mean, I know as well that you've got a big community already. So there's a Discord channel, which is very, very active, and
very active. 400
guys are amazing.
Around.
Yeah.
Shout out.
Yeah, it's great. It's brilliant, and I think also as well. I mean, I think you release a lot of the resources for free. You release a lot of sort of. I call them beta or preview rules. You know, the community is really involved in feeding back, testing things. It's a great community, really. So, I mean, I'd say any listeners, any watchers, head over to the Eldfall Chronicles website, and then you can find all of the Discord information there and jump into the channel. You can download these resources and try it all out. So, I think there was a tabletop simulator version of Eldfall Chronicles.
It still exists. We just haven't updated it for a long time, but like it's still as functional as it was.
You can still play online. The Eldfall Chronicles version 1. It's all there.
That's one thing, and definitely, like if you want to join the Discord and talking to like anyone interested in the game, just hop on to the Discord, ask whatever you like. Like that community is super active. Everyone is excited to talk about the game, other stuff as well, definitely.
They are also they also get like previews of the next campaign. So we will be publishing, I guess. Is a strong word, but we'll be revealing the rules very soon for the Northern Wind. So, as we said, they will be similar to the version 1 of the rules, but you'll be able to see how we adapted them.
But like community feedback is insanely appreciated, and we want to develop this game with the community. We are definitely doing our best, of course, behind the scenes, working on the components and miniatures, but like the rules need to be just as strong.
Especially for the skirmish wargame, because we want to keep it balanced.
So community, exactly. And community is basically, you could say, the only right source for you to, see the balance there and
properly
to ask for opinions and expectations and stuff like that. So it's immensely appreciated, any feedback you can give to us.
Yeah, that's one of the big draws of the game for me as well, is the community. I think that Discord channel is fantastic, and you see some companies handle it a lot better than others, but I think you've done a cracking job there building that community.
We just enjoy hanging out on
it's such a friendly group of people that it's very nice to be there.
I mean, honestly, we have like bad days and we have like ups and downs, right? But they're always there to
the community is always there to like bring the mood up. Like you could have a stressful day, and when you see like the what's going on in the Eldfall community, it always lightens my day. Keep being active, guys. Like
so
awesome.
I think then just to wrap up then, so the campaign is releasing in June 20th. Eldfall Chronicles Northern Wind. Head over to the Discord channel if you want to get all the latest news. That sounds like the best place to get the latest and hot off the press news with regards to the campaign. Or you've also got the Eldfall Chronicles website. We'll put all of the information underneath here so that people can find it. But that's been really, really interesting. Thanks very much for taking your time to come and talk to us about the new campaign, and I can't wait for the campaign to launch. I'll definitely be back in that one, I think. So
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you in advance. Like appreciate you having us here and going with us through all the things and so on, and taking your time to basically listening us to ramble about things and so on.
It's been brilliant. It's been brilliant.
In our broken Slavic accent. But many thanks. If I can say, like, for the people listening, please subscribe also to the newsletter. We'll be like giving away something special for the backers during the campaign.
Cool.
Yeah, that will basically give you like one really awesome miniature, together with your campaign. And yeah, please do that. And well, see you around, of course.
And I've nearly forgot. I nearly forgot the one question I definitely need to ask you. The most important question. It's not the most important question, but it's still a good question to ask you. So I hope you've had time to think now. So at Sprues and Brews, we like to ask all the people we talk to what their favorite sprue and what their favorite brew is. So maybe you can give us 2 of your favorite sprues and 2 of your favorite brews.
Well, among our miniatures, I don't have a favorite one because I like a lot of them. Let's say, I guess
that
I
sounds
really
like a cheat answer. That does.
Yeah. So I'm giving you one. I'm gonna say the Night Temple Priestess, so the succubus. She's my sweetheart. Also, I really like Kingdom Death miniatures, I guess, if I have to give you another company.
Can you point one out or indifferent?
The one with the umbrella, I forgot the name.
Yeah.
I really like that one. The art style and everything.
Did you say the brew?
Oh, and the brew. Belgian beer, I guess. Or German. Awesome. Very good.
For me, when it comes to minis, currently, like my preference always changes, but currently, when it comes to Eldfall minis, that would be definitely the Slayer Dragoon. She is a cookie. But otherwise, if I had to pick outside of Eldfall Chronicles, which would be a more fair thing to do, I would probably say the Infinity Shang-Chi Invincibles. I think those were my all-time favorite, and approximately 10 years ago, like the old Shang-Chi is the mini that got me into the game. I think, yeah.
Very cool.
And the brew?
And the brew, that will be extremely cheesy, but it will be vodka with strawberry juice.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, that's great. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll definitely keep our eyes peeled on the website and the campaign. I wish you all the best of luck with the campaign, and hopefully we'll get to speak to you again at some point in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Thanks for supporting us, and see you.
Many thanks. Sorry we're awkward, but yeah, thank you in all ways possible.
Excellent.